If you're thinking about making a move to Alberta, I'm going to give you my top reasons why you might just hate it out here, so you're not going to want to miss this video. Hey, it's Ryan Gillard here with Real Broker, your Calgary real estate agent. Welcome back to the channel about all things living in Calgary. And in this week's video, we're talking about the things I dislike the most about living in Calgary and in Alberta. And it's not to take shots at Alberta, it's simply to give information to people who are thinking of moving out here. And in fact, Calgary is often rated as one of the most livable cities in the entire world. But there certainly are some things that I'm not too fond of, which I will go over. And if you are watching this video, feel free to reach out. You can call, text, email, or comment. I will get it and get back to you. All right, number one, let's get right into it here. And the first topic here is the weather. Always on every Canadian's mind is the weather. Alberta is no different. It's not that we're the hottest province or the coldest province, but we are definitely up there in terms of how unpredictable the weather is here. I'd say between Alberta and Newfoundland, those are probably the two most unpredictable weather jurisdictions in Canada. It's just hot, cold, just really, really bizarre weather patterns. And if we talk about the winter in Alberta, if the temperatures are seasonal, it's not too bad at all, but it can definitely get down to like minus 40 during the odd cold snap here and there. And so if you're someone that's not too fond of the winter, you might not like it here because the winter does start early and it lingers as well. And we have unpredictable weather patterns during the winter. I live in Calgary, and the one saving grace with our winters here in Calgary is we have these things called Chinooks, which is kind of like warm air coming from the Pacific, and it can rapidly change the temperature in Calgary. It can go from like minus 40 to plus 15 in the same day. Now, what happens is the pressure can change rapidly, and some people who are prone to migraines can get terrible migraines during this period of the Chinook coming into the city. So it's good and bad for some people. So in terms of weather, one thing I dislike a lot about Alberta would be the fall and the spring months. So if we look at the fall, like the images of orange and yellow and reddish type leaves on trees, that does happen here, but it lasts like a week or two, then bang, it's into full-on winter. So all the leaves can die off really quickly, and it turns into like a really ugly brown color. Alberta is not a very lush province. We have striking scenery here, but it's not a very lush province, especially if you're coming from places like Southern Ontario or Vancouver. It's mostly just grassland, and when all the leaves die off, it's just a really gross brown color during the fall and the spring. And if we look at the spring months now, what I don't like is that because of our high elevation, winter, it does seem to last longer than other parts of this country. And when other parts of Canada, their leaves are in bloom and it's turning into green and like the flowers are out, it can still be a bit brown in Calgary. And I always get a bit jealous when I see other places in the country and it's already vibrant and spring weather. So I can recall back in 2006, I moved to Vancouver to go to university. I left in April and there was a full-on snowstorm in Calgary. I got to Vancouver and it was in full bloom, nice and bright, nice warm weather. They were like 2 to 3 months ahead of us, it seemed like. So our weather can be definitely unpredictable, and our shoulder season, like winter starts early and it lingers for a long time. And I find that to be a bit depressing in Alberta, if I'm being honest. All right, let's talk about the summer months now. And there are some minor annoyances with the summers in Alberta. One of the big ones for me is that, say it's July, it's plus 30 outside, but at nighttime it can still get pretty cold. I think it's due to our higher elevation. So it could be like plus 30 in the daytime and plus 10 at nighttime. So it's good and bad. Like if you're trying to sleep, it's a little easier if it's cold at night. But if you're out on the patio with some friends, I would bring a spring jacket, even in the summertime, because it does get cold as the day goes on. And our weather can be very active here in the summertime. So we get like hailstorms. Like I've sold a property a couple of years ago, and in between when all conditions were removed and the possession day, a hailstorm came and shredded the property. There was like $30,000 worth of damage. So hail happens in the prairies every single summer. It's very common. Not that common where it like destroys property, but hail is a common occurrence in the prairies. And just very active weather. We get thunderstorms, lightning, we get tornadoes in Alberta as well. And if it does rain, it's not like pleasant like in the movies. It's coming at you sideways at like 100 kilometers an hour. Doesn't last very long. Like Alberta's not a very wet province. It's super dry here, but when it does rain, it can throw it down for say like 10, 20 minutes, and then it can be sunny again. So very active weather, and lately we're getting a lot of forest fires and smoke coming into Calgary. It wasn't always like this. This is kind of like a newer thing the past 5 years, I would say. And it can be very annoying, especially when you have long winters. It's finally nice outside, and then it's ruined by forest fire smoke. But my entire life, that wasn't an issue until the last few years. But overall, I'd say the summers in Alberta are quite pleasant. It's just the weather can be very active at times. Number 2, less open water. Let's be honest, if you're someone that loves the water, Alberta may not be the best place for you because we are totally landlocked, meaning no direct access to the ocean. And we also have fewer lakes and rivers compared to other provinces in Canada. There are some bigger lakes in northern Alberta, but far away from where the bulk of the population lives. In Calgary, where I live, there's not much for bodies of water, except maybe the Elbow in the Bow River, which are quite nice. But for lakes, the closest one would be like Sylvan Lake, which is about 2 hours away. In Calgary, there are some man-made lake communities, especially in the southern parts of the city. But they're typically exclusive to the people living in those neighborhoods, not open for the public. In the mountains, we do have some incredible lakes like Moraine Lake, Lake Louise, which are just stunning. But they're not, you won't see like motorboats and water skiers in these lakes. They're glacier fed, they're freezing. But they do look great. There are activities like kayaking and stuff like that. But they're not like the cottage country type lakes you'll see like in Ontario or like in the Okanagan with like water skiers. They're just too cold, but they are very beautiful. Number 3 is the boom and bust economy of Alberta. Now, economically speaking, the main disadvantage to living in Alberta is that our economy is still heavily reliant on the oil and gas prices, which can be unpredictable globally. Now, this can be good and bad as we have long upturns in Alberta. Like from the mid-90s all the way to late 2014 was a booming period in the province. Lots of jobs, lots of people moving here, lots of construction projects. Everything seemed to be pretty good. And then the prices of oil collapsed in late 2014, and we saw a really nasty depression-like period in Alberta. Basically, we had, if you look at Calgary, our office downtown vacancy rate went from pretty much 0 to like 33%. So we had people leaving the province, we had corporations leaving. It was a really nasty period during that time of low oil prices. So it can be good and bad. And slowly, I would say Alberta is diversifying away from oil and gas, but it's not as diversified as a place like, say, like the Greater Toronto area. But we are making progress in this area, I would say. And number 4 is politics, everybody's favorite topic. Now, I won't say too much on this because half the population will agree and the other half won't agree. But Alberta is an oil and gas jurisdiction. The whole world wants it, and we have a lot of it, and I can't see it going away anytime in the near future. So if you're someone that's dead set against any kind of oil and gas production, you're probably not going to like it too much in Alberta. It is a big deal out here. It would be like me moving to Southern Ontario and being very against the automotive manufacturing industry, or moving to Newfoundland and being against cod fishing. It doesn't make much sense to me. And the last point I'll make about politics is that there always seems to be a fight between Alberta and Ottawa. Our goals just don't seem to be aligned all that much, and I'll leave it at that. Please do your own homework regarding politics. All right, so we touched on the main disadvantages to living in Alberta as a whole. Now we'll talk about some of the minor nuisances that I think about when living in Calgary specifically. And the first one would be construction. So Calgary is a city that's always expanding, it's always growing. So we have long winters, then all of a sudden it's nice outside and there's construction everywhere. It's all over the place. Just a minor annoyance though, like any big city will have construction issues, and Calgary is no different. Number 2 is Calgary doesn't have a vibrant nightlife, and it can get kind of boring. I think this is gradually getting a little bit better. A lot of the rules post-COVID were to bring patios into the streets during the summertime, and it has helped things out, but it's just a regular city that people move to, and they work, they go home. It's definitely not a party city, and it's not a city that never sleeps like Las Vegas. And it's just a very normal city, and I find it can be kind of boring as well. And number 3 is that downtown Calgary is a bit of a ghost town after hours. And this ties into the last point of it being a bit of a boring city. Like there is a shockingly little amount of activity happening downtown Calgary after hours. People work downtown until 5 p.m. Then they they go back home to the suburbs, and it becomes a bit of a ghost town. Now, if you are someone looking to live in the inner city in a more livelier part of Calgary, please reach out. I can let you know my thoughts. There are some pockets here and there that are always a bit lively, but overall, the downtown core is a bit of a ghost town after hours. In terms of the suburbs in Calgary, one thing I don't like about it is that everything seems to look identical as you get out further from the core. All the new developments, they're all 2 stories. There's no back alleys, hard to park out front, and they all look identical. It's not very original in the suburban parts of Calgary. Calgary's a bit of an urban sprawl as well, in that it's just a huge area. If you were to take the land area of Calgary and put it on top of other major North American cities, it would easily dwarf most of them. It covers a huge area, and you have to have a car in Calgary. So it's a city that you need to have a car. Despite that, there are lots of parks and green paths throughout Calgary, but you're still going to want to have a car. And if you don't, you're going to want to live near the C train line, which brings me to my next point, in that our C train, it does cover a huge area of Calgary. It's not too bad. I watch a lot of these videos, and a lot of people are bashing our transit system. I don't think it's all that bad compared to most cities, but the one thing that I do hate about Calgary is that our train line does not connect to the airport. I can't figure out why. It just makes total sense to me to connect the C train to the airport, but for some reason, there's no political will to get this done. It drives me crazy. And this next point, I get this quite often, and it's usually coming from European people, and that they always say Calgary, there's not much in terms of cultural activities or festivals and concerts. I've only been to Europe once, so I can't really comment on this too much, but we do have the Calgary Stampede, but maybe that's not enough compared to how life is in Europe. And the last point, which can also be specifically to Calgary or to Alberta as well, in that it's a bit of an isolated location living in Alberta. Nothing is close to Alberta. The next flight east would be to Winnipeg, which would be an hour-and-a-half flight. Toronto is about 3 hours, about an hour to Vancouver. Nothing is all that close to Alberta, so it is a bit of an isolated location. Well, there you have it. That's my list of the biggest negatives living in Calgary and Alberta. No city or province is perfect, and the pros definitely outweigh the cons. Calgary is one of the most livable places in the entire world, but no city is perfect. And if you are someone thinking of moving to Calgary, please go down to my written description, and there is a link in there that you can click where you can start searching for all the different properties throughout Calgary. And if you are thinking of making that move and you could use some help, you can also call, text, email, or comment, and I will get it, and I will get back to you. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day.